A secret Pentagon program to study unknown aerial objects, otherwise known as UFOs, may not be finished after all.
The civilian contractor for the program was Bigelow Aerospace, which is based here in Las Vegas. Their contract, though, ended in 2012, but the man who managed the program inside the Pentagon, he thinks it's still operating. George Knapp of the I-Team is here with more on his exclusive story tonight.
His name is Luis Elizondo, and most of us first heard his name last October when he stood on a stage with rock star Tom DeLonge and other government insiders. Elizondo spent 10 years as head of a secret study of unidentified aerial objects. He was also instrumental in the release of official UFO videos recorded by military pilots. We sat down with him earlier this week to ask, among other things, why the Pentagon considers UFOs to be a potential threat.
Is it a threat? If it's a threat, is it Russian? Is it Chinese? And yet, these are all normal questions you would ask, whether you're dealing with terrorism or weapons of mass destruction or any issue du jour, right? National security issue du jour. And yet, here we are with something that doesn't fit.
Luis Elizondo has spent most of his adult life protecting his country, on active duty in combat hotspots, handling terrorists at Guantanamo, and at the Pentagon, where he was the point man for ATIP, the Advanced Aerial Threat Identification Program. The program collected and analyzed information about encounters between the U.S. military and spectacular but unknown technology, what some would call UFOs.
My job in the government at the time, really, regarding ATIP was twofold: to determine what it was and how it worked. Not really focusing on, as I said before, who's behind the steering wheel or their intent. I figured if we can answer at least those two first things, everything else we'll be able to explain later.
Elizondo says even his immediate supervisor in the Pentagon was unaware of the program. The word threat is built into the name ATIP, and even though the unidentified craft being reported didn't launch an Independence Day type attack on humanity or zap major cities with death rays, the Defense Department had to consider the possibilities. The so-called Tic Tac UFO, for instance, was detected over several days in 2004 by personnel with the USS Nimitz battle group off the coast of San Diego. It didn't attack, but it demonstrated vast superiority over America's most advanced defense systems.
I think if you were to take this issue that we've seen and you have something coming into our airspace or the airspace we control that has maybe a Russian star on the tail or has North Korean tail numbers, I think people would have a much different reaction and response, because there's something we can identify and say that is in our airspace and shouldn't be here. You DOD, you CIA, you DHS have the responsibility of protecting us. How did this happen? And yet, here we have that same scenario, but there are no flags and tail numbers on the tail. In fact, there may not even be a tail on some of these things. And yet it's crickets. Nobody wants to have the conversation.
In 2007, a small group of senators led by Nevada's Harry Reid initiated a program to change the culture surrounding UFO reports. Reid was motivated in part because of classified reports he'd read about UFO encounters over U.S. nuclear bases in which atomic weapons were somehow disabled.
The communications in the missile defense installation was shut down. Didn't happen once, more than once. We have things in ships at sea. These things in the water, what is that?
The program set up by the Pentagon to assist ATIP was housed at Bigelow Aerospace in southern Nevada. The contract ended in 2012, but Elizondo believes some version of the study is still ongoing. He thinks it makes sense to study Tic Tacs and other UFOs and compares it to how you might react if someone pierced your home security system.
The first thing you do as you come down your stairs, as you look in your living room, you see muddy boot prints in your living room on the carpet that weren't there the night before. Now, nothing's been taken out of your house, nothing's been disturbed, no one's been harmed, and yet every night, despite you locking the front doors and the windows and turning the alarm on, there are muddy boot prints that keep showing up on your carpet. Now, is that a threat?
One other reason it's seen as a potential national security issue is that Lou Elizondo and Senator Reid say they've seen indications that both Russia and China are studying this as well. And if our adversaries figure out the technology before we do, it could be trouble. Tonight at 11, What about those UFO videos? Are they legit? Much more to come.
Oh, it's always so fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, George.